to our weekly discussion, Moral Side of the News. I'm Shawn Kaelin with the WHS Crusade for Children. Joining us today, as always, a distinguished panel. Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary and St. William Catholic Churches. Dr. John Slider, retired pastor, Free Methodist Church. Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson, St. Peter's United Church of Christ. And Rabbi Emerita Gaylia Rooks, the Temple. With vacations and July 4th holiday, it's been a couple weeks since we've all been together as a panel. And while some huge summer news in that time, the debate and its aftermath, the Supreme Court ruling that gives the president's absolute immunity for core official acts. We'll begin today with the fallout from the debate and increasing pressure for President Biden to withdraw as a Democratic nominee.
The president has defiantly rejected calls to drop out, insisting he's staying in the race and urging Democrats to rally around him. Still today, the powerful former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, went on television and said she'll support whatever decision the president makes. But she was pressed, hasn't he already announced he's staying in the race?
It's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short. I think overwhelming support of the caucus. It's not for me to say. I'm not the head of the caucus anymore. But he's beloved. He is respected, and people want him to make that decision, not me.
He has said he has made the decision. He has said firmly this week he is going to run. Do you want him to run?
I want him to do whatever he decides to do, and that's the way it is. Whatever he decides, we go with.
Pelosi urging Democrats to give the president space until the NATO conference ends this week.
I think it's really important, and I would hope everyone would join in, to let him deal with this NATO conference. And I've said to everyone, let's just hold off. Whatever you're thinking, either tell somebody privately, but you don't have to put that out on the table until we see how we go this week.
At a meeting of NATO leaders, the president asked about Pelosi's comments. Hours later, another blow. The New York Times publishing this op-ed from actor and Democratic megadonor George Clooney. I love Joe Biden, but we need a new nominee. Just 3 weeks ago, Clooney raised $30 million for the president at a star-studded Hollywood fundraiser. But today, Clooney writes, it's devastating to say it, but the Joe Biden I was with 3 weeks ago at the fundraiser was not the Joe Biden of 2010. He wasn't even the Joe Biden of 2020. He was the same man we all witnessed at the debate. Clooney was blunt. We are not going to win in November with this president. On top of that, we won't win the House, and we're going to lose the Senate. This isn't only my opinion. This is the opinion of every senator and Congress member and governor that I've spoken with in private. Every single one, irrespective of what he or she is saying publicly. Clooney, a major player in Democratic politics, ending with this. Joe Biden is a hero. He saved democracy in 2020. We need him to do it again in 2024.
So panel, I turn it over to you. A couple of questions. We'll take this one at a time. But first of all, is the Democratic Party behind President Biden as the nominee?
I don't know. And, you know, I would tell my parishioners, never take financial or medical advice from your pastor. And I'll add to that political advice or counseling, consulting. The Democratic Party, I'm an independent. The Democratic Party can do what it wants to do and what it feels like it needs to do. To me, on a moral level, to shift the subject a little bit, I think there's a lot of questions that I don't have any answers for, but I'm questioning, looking at President Biden's overall arc, or there seems to be some decline. There's some up and down, but generally, my observation, others may observe differently, there seems to be a gradual decline. Now, his family should be acting like a family and not a group of political consultants, and giving him good advice on whether he should continue in the race, not for selfish reasons. You know, if all of us here have dealt with parents who have had some difficulties in memory and functioning later in life, there's a point where you need to take the car keys away and take care of Dad or Mom or brother or whatever. That's on I would call it a micro level. On a macro level, I'm concerned as to either at this point or later on, not too far in the future, who's going to be actually functioning as president or doing those important constitutional jobs. I'm not making a political judgment. I'm just saying the people around him, political and those who work with him on a day-to-day basis, and his family and friends need to be giving him some good, solid advice for his sake.
I don't think it's as much for his sake as it is for the sake of the nation and for the sake of democracy. Having said that, if you've ever seen Joe Biden debate, that is the worst side of Joe Biden. I don't care how old he was. He was never a public speaker. He was never good at debates. He was sick the night of the debate, and his voice was raspy. He was over-prepped. It was a dismal showing, abysmal. I can't, no one can disagree with that. Does that mean he's not capable of running the country? Well, if our country was a debate tournament and the world stage, we'd put him up there and whoever won the debate got the land or got the peace or whatever it is, then he would not be a good candidate. But I think that we've seen, certainly over the last 3.5 years, that he has done a phenomenal job for this country. We are stronger and healthier, and the economy, the jobs, inflation, whatever metric you want to use, he's done more for the environment and for gay rights and for women and for, if you judge him on what he has done, to me, there's no question. The question comes in terms of cognitive decline. And I have to say, Joe Biden's been a public servant his entire life. I don't believe that he has the egomania to say that he's doing it just for the power and that he won't give up the reins because, when he came in as a nominee, he said, I ran in 2020 because I felt like that was what I had to do for the good of the country. And if he doesn't believe it's for the good of the country to run in 2024, I believe that he, with family and medical advice, would say that.
I think that the Democrats will rally around because our democracy is on the ballot. And I think that the Democrats, at the end of the day, will evaluate and make the right decision. But I want to pivot just a little bit because I'm concerned about the discussion on ageism. As I look at all of my colleagues around here with us, we are all approaching that age, and I feel as though we are being put out to pasture because of our age, and I'm concerned that our society is not honoring the experience and the education and just the overall wisdom that we as senior adults offer to the United States and to this world. And so I think that we are not totally addressing the issue of ageism in this political arena, and I'm concerned about that.
Well, building on maybe on something that John was saying, though, I think we've all, at least I have, experienced it in my own family. We did have to make decisions, all my siblings and I, how to best provide for not only our parents, but my dad was driving. He did get lost a couple times, and we did have to intervene. And that's not an ageism issue. That's a functionality issue at that age in his life. And I think there are certain, I'll speak to the Catholic Church, that we are expected to retire at 70. And bishops supposed to retire at 75. because the recognition is that as you get a little bit further along, you may not be able to handle all the stresses and pressure. Retirement doesn't mean you stop doing any work, that you lose all the gift of your wisdom. It just means that you may not choose to be now functioning in the leadership role, but you can be on the advisory role. You do a lot of substitute help. Our diocese couldn't function if it wasn't for the retired. We put quotation marks around that statement, that there aren't any retired priests out there, but they're no longer in those very complicated administrative roles. And I do think that we're focusing in on this particular individual candidate, but the proposed candidate for the Republican Party is also upper 70s. And at times doesn't always seem to have a full awareness either of what may be happening at any time. So, I mean, it's across the board. And there's plenty of people in the Senate, you know, people in the House of Representatives that they're there because they were rightly discerned at that time. But I just think it's going to be counterbalanced. There is a point at which there may be some wisdom at a certain age level that you can still serve, but maybe not in that kind of a leadership role.
You know, the average age of the U.S. Congress is over 65.
Yeah, and there seemed to be, and of course it's cute to giggle about whether or not President Trump is cognizant of whatever, however you said that or not.
He's upper 70s, yes.
Yeah, he's the age is there. I think the issue is not age, it's functionality.
Right.
And functionality deals with competency. Quick personal note, I'm a sports official and have to get up and down the field and remember rules and see what I'm seeing. And there comes a point where I cannot physically keep up with the athletes. And there comes a point where I'm not processing information as quickly as I could. Yes, I have wisdom to make calls when somebody asks me what a ruling is. But there's, you know, I've got to recognize when I've aged out.
But it varies so much from person to person.
Yes,
We
absolutely.
all know
No question.
70-year-olds who are cognitively much sharper than 55-year-olds
Absolutely.
or 89.
Yeah. And that's why I agree with Bill. It's a function and I will say competency. I'll add to your issue.
Yeah, right.
My observation of President Biden has been more than just the debate, but just, admittedly, clips. I don't listen to all of his speeches, but clips, interviews, and so on, one-on-one, that type thing. I hate to agree with George Clooney, but he'll be my source of information. He's not the guy he was 4 years ago.
Well, neither is George Clooney, and neither are we. None of us are the same. And that's not the
you
question.
and I are retired
but
since
that's
then.
not the question. And I
Yes,
think
I
that
agree.
there are competency questions in both parties. And
Fair
all
enough.
I'm saying is that I trust President Biden to do what's best for the country. And if he doesn't think he can handle it, I think that he would step down. The difference, though, is that I think he surrounds himself with really smart people who help him do a really good job. I don't know how heavily he leans on them. I have a suspicion that it's not that much, but at least he listens. And in the previous presidency, I don't think that we saw that. So to me, it's...
Well, taking policy and politics aside, I think President Biden does have an excellent, I can't think of his name, an excellent chief of staff who is probably an organizational genius from what I understand. And it is a well-managed White House, both in message and in getting what they want done.
Well, again, I think, but it's again, using that some of the examples you're talking to, I can speak to both my parents in two different situations. My dad, we had to take the keys away from him. He did not voluntarily.
Yeah.
He needed to do that. He was not ready to do that yet. We had to take it away. My mom, on the other hand, as she got further along, she tells a story. She remembers fussing about those little old ladies, you know, driving, you know, when she was in her 30s and 40s. At some point, something happened. She realized she was one. And she voluntarily gave up her keys. And
So how do you make that decision now?
Yes.
Because time is short, and
we're taping on Thursday morning. I think it's important to say that because I have a feeling that by most people see this on Sunday. I have a feeling by Sunday more breaking news will come out either
Certainly could.
one way or the other.
Yep.
So,
and the discussion has been great, and it leads to the second question I wanted to bring up. And what about cognitive tests? Should they be mandatory for the President of the United States? Should that person?
We couldn't even get the past president to show his tax returns. You think you're going to get impartial cognitive tests?
Let's not make it a Trump versus Biden. Let's just look at the general question. There's some invasiveness to that, to requiring a cognitive test and then publishing the results. I'm not sure. You know, there is a mechanism. What is it? Amendment 25 of the Constitution?
Yeah.
Yes. Is there enough will? Well, of course, that doesn't have to do with the campaign and the future election, but
But are you going to do that for all of the politicians? Because, I mean, our political system is aged, and all of them show some cognitive issues.
Sure, our own Senator McConnell, not necessarily cognitive, but certainly had some issues,
physical,
a couple issues that concerned a lot of people.
Well, and that's where you get more complicated too, and again, each individual. I would think, again, as leaders in congregations, I certainly have experienced some people who have what's called medically early onset dementia, where they might be in their 60s, and it's a medical condition, early onset. So it's not like just
even
because
50s. Have you not?
Yeah, occasionally,
I mean,
but that's an exception. But to say at a certain age, 80 you must take this test, or at 75 you must take this test. I don't think so.
Just at first glance, I would not want to require a cognitive test or have demands for it for an opposing candidate. That seems to me. I would not.
Certainly, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander.
Exactly. I would not demand that of President Biden or Senator McConnell or whomever. That's got to be a judgment of the political process, the campaigns and election process, and the family and the advisors of a candidate.
Great discussion, and as you pointed out, we tape on Thursday, and a lot can happen between now and Sunday when this airs, and so we'll keep an eye on it. Second topic, we turn to the historic Supreme Court decision regarding the office of the president, ruling that former presidents are entitled to immunity for core official acts.
At the Supreme Court today, a landmark decision that dramatically enhances the power of the presidency and makes it much harder to prosecute Donald Trump. At stake, whether the federal criminal case against Trump for his alleged conspiracy to overthrow the 2020 election, including January 6th, would go forward. Trump claiming as a former president he could not be prosecuted. Absolute immunity for any official acts taken while in office, and he argues everything he did then was official. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the court's 6-3 conservative majority, gave Trump much of what he sought. First, Roberts declaring the president may not be prosecuted for exercising his core constitutional powers. Those include, Roberts wrote, the president's commander-in-chief powers, pardon power, hiring and firing federal officials, and more. Then the Chief Justice went further. He is entitled, at a minimum, to a presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. That sets a very high bar for prosecutors to overcome, covering most of what a president does. And Roberts added another layer of protection for presidents. In dividing official from unofficial conduct, courts may not inquire into the president's motives. The bottom line, in the Trump case, the lower court judge must now sift through the evidence, separate out Trump's official acts from unofficial conduct, and see if prosecutors can overcome the presumption that presidents are immune from prosecution. That process will all but certainly push the case past the November election. Within minutes of the decision coming down, Donald Trump was declaring victory, posting on social media, "Big win for our Constitution and democracy. Proud to be an American." The court's 3 liberals seemed stunned and outraged. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, in an impassioned dissent, declaring, "Today's decision reshapes the institution of the presidency, puts the president above the law." And she painted a grim vision of what it could mean. When he uses his official powers in any way under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power? Immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon? Immune. Immune, immune, immune. And she concluded, with fear for our democracy, I dissent. President Biden's campaign saying the stakes in this election just got much higher. They just handed Donald Trump the keys to a dictatorship.
So panel, the Supreme Court has never decided if presidents could be prosecuted before. The court's decision makes it very hard to hold a president accountable for crimes. So the question, how do you see this playing out moving forward with future presidents? Will they use the powers not given to them, worry-free, to break the law?
I just think it's interesting that some people are saying, oh, this is a big day for our Constitution, or, you know, for the founders of our country. The whole point of founding this country was that we didn't want a king, that no one is above the law. We are all equal in the eyes of the law.
A lot of hyperbole, I'll even grant on both sides. I think the Supreme Court really tried to steer a middle-of-the-road path.
So they could wait till
immunity
after the election.
I'm sorry?
So they could wait till after the election.
To do what?
To come out with any real decisions.
I don't think they're going to revisit their own decision. They've made a middle-of-the-road decision or a moderate decision right now. I do think President Obama is breathing a sigh of relief because now he can't be prosecuted for ordering the assassination of an American citizen overseas with a drone strike. So there are a lot of things that happen within the core official duties that people could raise all sorts of issues over. It seemed to me, as I said, a middle-of-the-road decision. I think a lot of hyperbole is trying to twist exactly what the decision was.
I would wonder, going back in time, President Nixon in the Watergate, would he be exempt from prosecution at that?
And then he wouldn't have resigned?
He wouldn't have resigned and couldn't have been impeached.
I would say, you're asking a question, I would say
question.
no, because the break-in and, well, the cover-up was what he got in trouble for.
But he was doing it as an official.
Was not a part of his core official duties.
Well,
and that would have been up to a lower court.
Well, getting information, you know, could have been things, secret stuff being hidden back there, and he had to find out what that was, and that could be argued by anybody, that what he was doing was to protect the country and protect him and protect...
Well, not by anybody.
Well,
not by me.
Not by me, but by many people.
While this is a middle-of-the-road ruling, as you have stated, the issue is if Mr. Trump becomes president, then he will take advantage of the ruling that will have catastrophic effects against this country.
Well, that's, of course, an assumption based on your perspective that President Trump will do that. President Biden, if he gets reelected, will have the same protections. So I don't see this as Trump-centric. I see this as relating to the president's constitutional duties.
Yeah.
Boy, did I just kill the conversation?
No. But part of the struggle is it's not protecting constitutional duties as I see it. It is a question of accepting, in this case, an election, or trying to, in a sense, not just raise questions, actively seek to undermine it and overthrow it in a certain way. And so that's what I think is a distinction. To raise questions about it, that's fine. But that's where I thought the whole filing of the charges was based on that understanding.
What brought about this decision was the court action related to January 6th.
Right, yes. Yeah.
Okay, very good. We just have a few minutes left, but we're going to go to AI and Al Michaels, the Winter Olympic, or 2 weeks away from Summer Olympics, the person responsible for perhaps the most memorable call of all times. Do you believe in miracles? Yes. will have a big role in the next one. NBC is bringing a version of the famed sportscaster Al Michaels back for the Olympics this summer with an unlikely twist. His voice will be powered by artificial intelligence. NBC will use AI software to recreate Michaels' voice to deliver the daily recaps of the summer games. So, AI in a nutshell, what do you think of that? I mean, that's kind of scary and cool at the same time, but...
I'm confused because I read the story and heard about it, but is it the AI is going to actually write the own stories, or just going to mimic it? Somebody else is writing the stories and using his voice? That's what
the way I understand it, you can say, I want stories about track and field, I want stories
that's
about
what
this.
I thought.
A lot of sports
AI
stories are already written by AI.
And the AI will write the story and voice it using clips from his previous
So it will create the
calls.
stories.
Yes, both. His voice and write the story.
Yeah.
Well, AI has a lot of downside in the future. This seems harmless.
Actually, it doesn't seem harmless
but it's
to
the
me,
door
yeah.
cracking open, I think. And what is it, NBC that's running it? They can do what they want to. I'm really concerned about AI. But if it happens, let's just do moral side of the news next week is AI.
That's right, exactly.
Not sure Moral Side has the budget to pull that off. We could try. But it is scary, I believe, because they could take your voice from the shows you've done on Moral Side, and a crook could, they're doing it already.
Someone was just saying to me, she was expecting a call from a doctor, so she wasn't sure what number it was. She didn't want to let it go to voicemail, so she was answering calls. She didn't know what they were. I always let them go to voicemail. But when she hung up, she said, did you notice I never said yes? This is she, or, you know, I understand what you're saying. And she said, don't ever say yes. If they can capture your voice saying yes, then they can say they have a recording of you saying yes to anything they want. And this was just this past week, and I'm like, wow, that's scary. I'm sure there's much scarier stuff out there, but yeah, AI, you know, I've been a science fiction nut since I was a teenager, and AI is a scary thing. Certainly, a lot of the trials have not been working well with it, but it's almost inevitable. I mean, it's already here for so much.
Yeah. I mean, we're teaching our children, elementary kids, about AI because it's already here. Yeah. And, you know, you said it's scary. Well, we used to think cell phones were scary, and all of these other technology devices that we use were scary. And so I think we have to educate people, particularly our children, to make sure that they understand the ramifications of using that type of technology.
Very good. Thanks for a great discussion this week on Moral Side of the News. As always, you can join us on YouTube. Thanks to our guests, Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary and St. William Catholic Churches, Dr. John Slider, retired pastor, Free Methodist Church, Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson, St. Peter's United Church of Christ, and Rabbi Emerita Gaylia Rooks, the Temple. We'll have an all-new show for you next week. Until next week, have a good week.